All right, we got a 2014 Honda CRV. We're going to be changing out the rear wheel hub assembly or wheel bearing. Pretty straightforward job. We'll get into it right here. I've already got the part, so get your wheel off and get it jacked up, and we'll start tearing it down real quick here. All right, the first thing we're going to do is remove this brake caliper bracket. So you got two 17mm bolts back here. You have one here and one below. Go ahead and get an impact or whatever you have and remove those. And then I got a hook that will hook it to and move it out of the way. So go ahead and remove those two, and then we'll pull this whole unit off. All right, once you got that off, this whole unit, the whole bracket and copper will come off, and then I just use a hook here to suspend it in the air. Don't let it just hang down on the hose or anything like that. So now we'll go ahead and take this screw out here, and then we should be able to remove this rotor. There's little holes right here. You can put bolts in there, and that's what you use to pull this rotor loose. So first we'll take out this screw right here, and then we'll go ahead and remove this rotor. A lot of time on these screws here, I use an impact driver, and that's just, you can pick these up anywhere. Well, any tools place will have it. And you just stick the right bit on there, and then you beat on this end with a hammer, and that'll loosen this up. It's an impact driver. So that'll help you. These sometimes don't want to come out all that easy if you don't have something like this. So pick one of these up if you don't have it. Make it a little bit easier to get those type of screws out. So you can see here I put two bolts in the holes on those rotors, and I just use an impact and drove it down, and that'll pull this rotor right off, get you down. So what we're going to do next is pull this axle nut off, and then we should be able to start working on pulling this hub off. So get yourself the axle nut, and then we'll run that off and start pulling this hub off. All right, so we got a 32mm axle socket on there. Go ahead and run that off. And then pressing on it, make sure it's loose. It is. So anyway, we'll get set up and start pulling this hub off. All right, so you got to get these four bolts off. They're back behind here, and the bolts run this way through the hub or the spindle, and then the hub is bolted. It's got the holes that these screw into. Anyway, I use a combination of, on the two towards the back of the vehicle, I just use a small extension and a shallow socket, 17mm, and no problem with no problem at all with the impact, the stubby impact. And then on the front two, I use both the extensions together just to clear the spring here, because it's kind of in the way when you're trying to take it off. If you don't have an impact, you can always use a regular ratchet. It's just a lot faster with a stubby. So now that those are off, we should be able to work this hub off and get it off, and then put the new one on. All right, so since we're replacing this anyway, I just took a small sledge and just tapped it on the top and tapped it on the bottom, and came right loose. So now that it's loose, you can pull off the axle, and we'll go ahead and slide the new one in. Before we do that, though, it's a good idea to get in here if you have like a wire brush, maybe one you could put in your drill. Clean all this up inside here, and then put a little lube in there, which I will do. And then before you put the new one in, just makes the seat a little bit better, and get all this crap off of this mounting surface here. All right, so I use these brushes with my or with my power drill here. I use these brushes to clean out valve bodies when doing transmissions and stuff, when you're rebuilding them or rebuilding the valve body or whatever. These work really good for stuff like this too. Just run around the edge of that where that bearing goes in or the hub goes in, and clean it all up. And then we'll spray it down with some oil or whatever, and get it nice and lubed up, and then we'll set that new bearing in there. All right, so after you spray that down, go ahead and start the bearing. Put the axle through here, make sure that's locked in, and then just kind of work it in back to where it seats down. You're going to put those four bolts in back here, and then we'll go ahead and tighten those down. So kind of do that in a crisscross pattern when you do that. Don't just and make sure they're all started before you torque one down. So anyway, I got them all started, so I'm going to go ahead and start working on torquing them down. And we'll do a I'll probably tighten this one, then tighten this one, then tighten this one, then tighten this one. So kind of do a crisscross pattern on it. And anyway, get those tight, and then we'll put the nut on here. All right, once you got those back bolts down in there and snug, tighten them down to 72 foot-pounds of torque, all 4 of them. Now we'll put these axle nut back on and torque that down. All right, so this is all-wheel drive. So this is 133 foot-pounds of torque to tighten this. And then right here you have the split in the axle, and I usually just take a little punch right here, and you're supposed to bend that down. So just take a punch or something hard right there on the end of that, and tap on it until it kind of bends down into this axle, and then that's kind of like what locks it in there. So 133 foot-pound, bend that down, and then we'll move on to putting the brakes back on. All right, go ahead and put your rotor back on. Don't forget to put your don't forget to line this up so that this bolt goes in one of the 2 holes that are available to screw it into, and then go ahead and screw this down pretty tight as you can get it with a regular screwdriver. And then now we'll set that caliper back on here and get those 2 retaining bolts in the back put on. All right, once you get started, these 2 bolts here, you got one on top, one on the bottom. Go ahead and bolt those down. They're 80 foot-pounds of torque from the factory. That's what they want you to tighten it to. So those are bolted down. So now you're pretty much back to just putting your wheel back on. It's pretty much it. I'm putting a rear wheel hub assembly on a 2014 Honda CRV. It's pretty straightforward. Of course, it makes it easier if you have power tools, especially the impact stubby. Allows you to get into places a regular impact may not get into. So anyway, I think that's it for this video. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't. Appreciate it. Thanks for watching, and we got a few other little things we have to do to this car. So I'm going to address those things and get this hoopty back on the road, and we'll catch you on the next one. Thanks for watching.